Hear the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew.
Glory to thee, O Lord.
From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and to take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what would it profit them if they gain the whole world, but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is come with it, the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. This is the Gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to thee, O Christ.
So please be seated. It's somewhat salutary coming back after a peaceful and restful summer to be faced with a somewhat grim series of readings like this. And one wonders, it would be quite nice to have something a bit more kind of picturesque and fluffy and sweet and cuddly or something to begin. So Jesus, having just commended Peter, when Peter up in the north region of the country, up near Galilee, at a place called Banias, Caesarea Philippi, he said, Jesus has been asking them, who do people say I am? And they said, well, maybe you're a prophet, one of the prophets, or John the Baptist, or Elijah, or something. But then he said, but who do you say that I am? You inclusively, to the whole group. And Peter said, you're the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus blessed Peter, saying, well done, Simon, son of John, Simon Bar Yonah. Flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but the Spirit of God. And upon this rock I will build my church. And on that idea, the Roman Catholic Church claims what they call Peter's primacy, that he is the rock upon which the church is built. I'm not convinced that's exactly how it's meant to be understood. Because they're all there, and he spoke to them all together. But, nevertheless, it said that the church is built on the foundation of the apostles, on this rock, the knowledge that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. But anyway, Peter, having had this thing, having had this blessing, this commendation and encouragement, he then promptly turns around and is then told by Jesus that he is now Satan, which has got to be a bit of a come down. Now, Peter, if you like, had that inspired insight. You're the Messiah, the Son of God. But that was it. That was the end of the inspired insight. Because as soon as he reverts to the normal way of thinking, he then tells off Jesus for planning on going to suffer, to confront the authorities down in the south. He's saying he's going to go and be killed and on the third day be raised. I don't think the disciples exactly knew what to make of this, because they were all completely confused when the things actually happened. Jesus had repeated these things according to the Gospels many times by this time, and they obviously didn't take him at his word. They thought it must have some metaphorical meaning or something unpleasant, but the idea of him actually dying like that just didn't seem to quite figure in their thoughts. And when he did die, they seemed absolutely astounded that he rose again from the dead. And of course, he'd actually told them several times that he was planning on doing this, but none of them seemed to have believed him or understood what he meant. And so likewise, but obviously this is not a good thing. He's obviously not planning on going down to Jerusalem simply to be happy and have a party and be warmly received by his friends. And so Peter confronts him. God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. A natural human reaction to someone that you care for. But he said, you think as men think, not as God thinks. You are thinking wrongly. You have missed the point. You are wrong, Peter. You are categorically, emphatically wrong in this matter. Not wrong to care for Jesus, but wrong, if you like, to confront him and rebuke him and completely misunderstand the whole situation. Jesus, I think, has his own battle here, because this is the way forward for him. He knows he must do this. He knows what is coming, and he does not like it at all. It said at one point he set his forehead like flint to go to Jerusalem. And then in Gethsemane, he is in that terrible anguish of prayer, and it says he sweated blood in his anguish. So he knows what is coming, and he is bracing himself for it. And he's trying to pull himself together to go through with it. He knows what he must do. And he's a man. He has that terrible knowledge of what is ahead of him. And he knows what he must do. And yet, contrary to the way of the world, this is actually the way of wisdom. This is actually the way for Jesus' own blessing, for his own achievement. And this is where, if you like, the way of the world and the way of heaven completely part company. And many have commented recently on the madness in the world. You see it all over the place. You see the madness in Russia and Ukraine. You see the madness in politics at times. You see the madness in education sometimes. You think, what on earth are people thinking of? And you wonder why people are seized with ideas which seem so preposterous. Why on earth are they doing this? Isn't it obvious? And we're perplexed. Rightly so, because it is crazy. But this is what you might call the world. The world in its whatever it is. This is what the world does, and what it's always done, actually. This is the world, what Scripture calls the world, meaning that which is of physical and that which actually is opposed to God, collectively. And this is where I kind of take a little bit of issue with some of the ways this has been translated, in that Jesus says, if anyone would save his life, he would lose it, and those who lose their lives for my sake will find it. For what profit a man, it says, if they gain the whole world at the forfeit of his life? For what will a man exchange his life? The trouble is, if you make it into a group thing, which they have done there to avoid this M word, this man word, it then kind of disperses the responsibility. It then puts it as a kind of collective responsibility. What will we do? I don't know. We have to have a council meeting to discover it. But the fact is, Jesus is putting the ball squarely in our courts for each one of us to decide where we stand in this matter. Because we each have this individual personal responsibility and accountability before the Lord, which Jesus is very pointedly giving to them. And he says, for what will a man exchange his life? You know, when it comes to it, if we are in the peril of death, what will we give for our life? Now, what is our life worth to us? What do we think it's for? And Jesus wants his friends to think about this. But Matthew wants us individually to consider this. He wants us to hold this in our hands and think, well, what do I make of this? Where do I stand in this? Because we will be judged, each one of us. We won't be judged collectively. It won't be a kind of group thing by which we are assessed by heaven. We'll be judged on what we have done. Because it says, for when the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of the Father, he will repay everyone for what he has done. Every single one of us will be repaid for what we have done. And that contains a threat and a promise. Because those who have done evil and gone the way of the world will be condemned. That's the threat. But for those who have believed in the Son of God and walked with him, they'll be rewarded according to what they've done. You know, all the parables, come and show your master's happiness. Good, well done, good and faithful servant. You know, all these kind of things. You know, the parable of the bridegroom, the bridesmaids go in singing and dancing with the party. You know, that's the promise to us as well. So when it says each will be repaid for what he has done, he's talking individually to us. We will be repaid. And he wants us to take to heart the fact that what we do on this earth is not meaningless. It is not something indifferent to the Lord. And it is something that matters deeply to the Lord. And he will reward us. So it's worth doing something. It's worth doing something right. It's worth actually cleaving to what is good. But the trouble is that the world around us is opposed to heaven. And that will come at times at a cost if we wish to follow heaven. But that is what you might call is the way of wisdom. One reason I read out the Ten Commandments is because I was talking about them with a friend yesterday, and he was saying, sometimes they're perceived as these austere commands, this harshness. And as the epistle was read, the reader confessed that there's difficulty living up to this, which I'm sure if any of us, in any sincerity, have ever attempted to, we will all feel that difficulty. But the reason it's written is because this is how we are made. We are created to do that. That is what we're made for. We have been made in the image of God, in God's image, to do that. And if we do that, we live what you might call wisely. We live according to our creation. We live in harmony with our creation, with our origin. We live in harmony with our Maker. We will therefore be blessed by that. That is how to find what it means to be human. To live like that. We will discover, if you like, our true humanity by living in the way that God has described. We will discover what it means to be blessed. And we will be a blessing to those around us. So when Paul gives this, in one respect, very warm-hearted and kindly description, or put it another way, when there's a terrifying list of instructions, let love be genuine. That is what it means to be human, to be genuine in love. And I'm sure all of us can recognise that, from the moments when we've actually done it ourselves, or in those times when we've been the beneficiaries of it, we know just how good it is for that love to be genuine. And so Paul is encouraging us, do it. And Jesus encourages, saying it because that your Father will recognise that. He will reward that. He will bless that. And if we go back to creation, he says that's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be real, if you like. And we will all struggle with that. But the Lord does not abandon us to it. He doesn't set us this impossible task and then laugh when we fail to succeed in it. Because he is compassionate for us, he knows our weakness, and he is merciful and gracious. And moreover, he has equipped us in order that we can point in the right direction. He's not expecting us to, if you arrive in perfection. What he's asking us is to turn in that direction and think again, well, how can I do this? How can I actually apply myself to this? And if we come to it in that kind of attitude before the Lord and say, Lord, will you show me how I can do this? Will you lend me your Spirit? Will you speak to me by your scriptures or by your friends or by your servants? Will you remind me and encourage me so that I can have a go at this? Then the Lord will do that. And we will find that if we're willing, if willing, if like to be a bit cross-grained at times, to go against our natural inclinations, to go against sometimes the people around us, the pressures of the world, we will find we can actually do it in a way that might be surprising at times. But moreover, as we apply ourselves to it, we'll find that we actually get better at it. And we'll find the consolations from these things. I was in conversation yesterday with someone who was describing a relative who was someone who had, I'm trying to put this delicately, acted in a way which was not always in the best interests of those around her, and had done so in an ongoing and persevering way over a long period of time. And one of the things that if you live that way is you will not discover joy in that. And when I mentioned that, my conversation partner remarked, actually you're right, there's no joy in that. There's no joy in this person. This is not a happy person. And one of the consolations of living in the way which the Lord describes is actually we will discover joy. We will discover a peace in that and a satisfaction in that which we will not know any other way. And the challenge before this is that this is truly at odds with the world, with our own self-interest. When Jesus says you pick up your cross and follow him, sometimes that's taken as a description of a long, wearisome, ongoing burden. And it's used in that kind of colloquial way. Jesus, of course, carried his cross for quite a short time. Between about 9 in the morning and midday, maximum 3 hours, possibly, probably a lot less than that actually. It didn't take an awful lot of time for him to actually get to the place of crucifixion. And when he was there, it didn't take him that long to die actually. So his whole cross experience didn't actually last very long. So it wasn't a long experience, whatever else it was. But it was a certain one, because he knew it was going to happen, and he knew it was going to be horrible. But he also knew that this is the way that he would become king. This is the way he would save the world. This is the way that he would show us the way to glory. This is the way in which he would make a way to heaven for us his beloved. This is the way by which he would make clear for us our own perfection, our own regeneration, our own recreation. The reason we're hearing these words today is because he did that in order that we would be saved and that we would become better. We would become perfected according to him. It's the way, if you like, of perfection. The way in which he became complete and perfect, and the way in which he makes us perfect. And it is utterly against everything in the world around him. It is totally contrary to every earthly principle or worldly guiding advice. There's nothing there in legal advice to say, go and get yourself crucified. Nothing at all. It is totally contrary to the world. And I think that is Jesus' main point. It is contrary to the world. And he's saying, set your hearts on the things of heaven. Live that way. Because that is how you'll save your souls. That is how you will find what it means to be human. That is how you will find the joy and the peace and the satisfaction in life. And that is how you'll find the way to heaven. And I won't go through them now, but in the Psalm and in the reading from Jeremiah, in both of them there is, if you like, a poetic expression of the experience of living like that. Jeremiah's endless, relentless hardships, his opposition from those around him. But at the same time, he said, your words were found and I ate them, and your words became to me a joy and the delight of my heart. And because of that, there is no going back. He can't simply forget them and go and live in the way of the world, because he has known that joy and that delight in his heart. There is no going back now. He must carry on. And the Lord promises him, I will make you to this people a fortified wall of bronze. They'll fight against you, but they will not prevail over you. It's a kind of promise to us that if we delight in those words, the world around us will not prevail over us. He will deliver us out of the hand of the wicked and redeem us from the grasp of the ruthless. And the psalmist just leaves these words, which I think are such good words to remember. He says, I will wash my hands in innocence, O Lord. And I think that's the fundamental principle behind this way of living that Jesus would have us do, is to wash our hands in innocence, to be innocent in all that we do, and to value that more than anything else. Because if we do that, the Lord truly is our Redeemer. And as Paul says, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will have burning coals on your heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It is actually the way of joy and peace and wisdom as well as the way of the cross. It's the way to life. And it's not impossible. The Lord's not asking of us the impossible. He's asking us to be willing. If we're willing, He'll be with us all the way. And that's His promise to us.